All right. So for some reason, controversy about AI art reached some kind of, I don't know, boiling point this week. I've pretty much said everything I have to say about AI art on this channel or on my blog in the past. I've showed how you can use it to assist in cover design, how you can use it to generate images for book covers, how to meld those images together to make like a coherent book cover that will communicate genre and that kind of stuff. I've done a couple demos on that, and it's been really fun. But for whatever reason, I guess maybe the more right-wing people have suddenly jumped on the bandwagon of like AI art is bad and it's dangerous and something like that. So I want to break that down, and I'll just go over basically what I wrote on my blog, all the points that I wrote on my blog regarding this, which is stuff that I've talked about before. So if you've been here before, you've probably heard all of this stuff in some context before regarding AI art. So there's a lot to go on here as far as like, where's the morality? I really only think there's one moral issue that's possible and not even, and it's still pretty gray, and I'll get to that. So anyway, problem number one is people thinking that AI art is art. That is to say that it is the same as somebody painting a picture. AI art doesn't work that way. Now, the reason that people think that AI art is art, it doesn't have any artistic intent. You're putting in a prompt, and maybe you get an image that you can use that's somewhat close to what you were trying to prompt, something that you can use in a project. That's what I tend to use it for. But it's not the same as an artist having artistic intent and a vision and then fulfilling that vision. It's not the same thing. There's no artist involved in AI art. It's a piece of software using a whole bunch of different algorithms, stochastic reverb stuff, if you're talking about stuff like stable diffusion, to generate an image that's using the prompt to filter that in a way. It's a lot more complicated than that. You can look up all the blogs on like how AI art actually works. It's more than just like smushing images together. There's a lot to it, but it doesn't have artistic intent. So thinking that it's art, it is a computer generated image. The reason people think it's art is that the 20th century, we really divorced art from artists. That was one of the things that happened as a result of the modern going into the postmodern period as far as art goes. And it goes across all arts, literature, music, visual art. All of these will have elements of what I'm talking about. The modern was about creation of new aesthetics. The postmodern was about even more new aesthetics and really divorcing the idea of aesthetic. The idea of death of the author is a postmodern idea. So the people that think AI art is art are the same people that think that Disney Star Wars is canon because Disney paid for the copyright. And they're the same people who think Sam and Frodo are gay because they, as an individual, happen to interpret their relationship as gay. This is I don't need to like go on a big lecture about why this is nonsense, but it is, because artistic intent matters. So the 20th century, we've lost the idea of artistic intent, and therefore looking at AI art as like art that magically appears as art is understandable, because people haven't experienced art in the traditional sense in like 100 years. We're really at a nadir for the development of the arts because of the degradation of the arts in the 20th century, the destruction of the arts. Just because something looks cool doesn't mean it's art. It could be a cool image, but it's not something that like an artist has made. It's not even work performed to a standard. There's a more random element to it. Even when you're trying to use or trying to create assets using an AI, you are going to end up with this thing where like most of them are not going to be usable. You're kind of rolling the dice as to whether you're going to get one. All right, so that's problem number one. Problem number two is people thinking that they're an artist because they're telling a computer what to do. These are people who call themselves AI artists, and these are some of the most deluded people on the internet. It would be like somebody in 1996 discovering Alta Vista search engine and declaring themselves an internet wizard because they can I can just look up any web page. I can find anything on the internet. I'm an internet wizard because I know how to enter things into a search engine, right? That's the same idea. It's like, oh, well, I've conjured up this magic prompt that produces this image. Well, yeah, I produced 100 images that looked like crap, and I picked one out and showed it to you to show that I'm a great AI artist. And then most of the time, the stuff that AI artists show off as like, this is an incredible mid-journey stable diffusion combination. What they're showing actually looks bad because they are not artists. They don't understand like the human form. So it's like, here's this soldier with this really cool ornate armor, and it's like his ear is like up here. His ear's in the wrong place. He's anatomically bizarre, and it looks uncanny and strange because it's not made by an artist who like knows the human form and is visualizing how it works. But the person who's looking at it is also not a trained artist, so they don't really understand what they're looking at. They don't understand the flaws of what they're looking at. They see that it looks cool without really knowing why it's not that good. And then they treat their little the words that they put into a prompt like they're some kind of magic spell. Like, I know, I will share, if you pay my Patreon, I'll share with you my secret prompts. I'm like, just spend 10 minutes with the program and you're gonna figure out how to use it, guys. It's not that hard. You just try out some different words and see what happens, and then like add some words to what you did before, and before you know it, you're refining what the algorithm's producing for you as far as an image goes. It's not magic. It's a computer, okay? But it's like, no wonder people think this stuff is demonic, because the AI artists treat it like it's some kind of magic spell, and they're conjuring art up from the abyss, like they're summoning evil, like eldritch beings from some other dimension. No, it's not that way. Now, this is a weird one. This is a weird kind of religious reaction, is that AI art is demonic somehow. This would imply that demons are able to affect the physical world, because the computer is a material object, right? It's not a spiritual object. Now, if the computer is a spiritual object, then I guess this argument would go out the window. I'm making this as an aside. It's not in the article, by the way. But the computer is a physical object. It's immaterial. I mean, it's material. It's not spiritual. There's no soul to a computer. And demons are immaterial, at least in the Christian tradition. So if the demons are immaterial, how are they affecting the material object known as a computer? And why are they doing it? And to what effect are they actually doing it? In the Christian tradition, demons affect people. They don't usually like blow up your car engine, right? If demons could just blow up your car engine, they would just do that and kill you. So they affect you. Demonic affliction is on you in a spiritual sense. It's on a person. It's not on an object usually. I mean, there's exceptions, because we're talking 2,000 years of history with this, and more, actually, a lot more than that. But usually demons are not ones that like make your spear explode, or like make your soup like turn it into poison or something like that. They're not affecting the physical world that way. So if demons are working through the computer, how are they affecting the computer? I'd say what's more likely is that demons influence people. And why would they need to use AI art when they have the entire internet and all of its pornography in order to tempt you with? I think people are looking down the wrong hallway as far as demonic activity, and they need to be looking at what people are saying to each other and are expressing on social media, as well as what they're doing when the doors are closed on the internet and they're able to search to their heart's content whatever vile thing happens to go into it. That's where demons, I think, are really working as a Christian, as a religious person. Anyway, that's an aside. So that was problem number 2. People think they're an artist because they're entering words into a search engine. Problem number 3 is that non-artists don't really get it. So most of the pushback is from either artists who feel threatened, like they're going to lose their livelihood, and then a lot of non-artists who don't really get what AI art is used for by artists. So one of the things you can check out, and I'll just link it in the chat here, is an artist named Noah Bradley. He was well known in Magic the Gathering. He did Magic the Gathering cards, and he's illustrated for, like, I don't know, D&D and a bunch of stuff like that before he got canceled. One of the victims of cancellation, because I think he persuaded women to have sex with him at conventions 10 years ago or something like that. Anyway, so he got canceled, but he does have a great resource on how he could use AI art to sketch. So you use the AI to create a sketch, to come up with a bunch of things, and then you paint over those, you alter those, you put them together. Instead of photo bashing a bunch of photos together to get your sketch, you use AI stuff, and then you can make you can really speed up the sketching process. You speed up the process where you're generating the creative ideas so that you can get to the part where you're making the final image. That's what he's doing with it. So artists have are using it, they've already used it. Yeah, it'd be better if artists could have all the time in the world to compose every detail, but we live in a world of limited resources where we want the art done quickly. We want it done to a standard, and we want it done on time. So artists tend to take shortcuts. And a lot of people who aren't artists don't have a strong historical knowledge of the arts, and whether they're music or anything else, but especially visual arts, because it's really easy to see what kind of shortcuts painters and stuff used in the past. They would paint the same painting multiple times and sell it. So this was a common thing, is that you could find different versions of the same painting by the same artist. Why would he paint the same thing? Or you'd find an artist painting something really similar to another artist, like a variation of it, because they liked it, they liked the composition, and then they wanted to do their own version of it, either as a study or just to sell. So artists copied each other relentlessly. And of course, if you go really far back, like to the medieval ages, most of the art was never signed. The artist didn't really sign it. Like iconography, icons weren't necessarily signed with the hand who drew them, right? They were done for the glory of God. Most of the music from the medieval period wasn't even signed. And the idea of like copying being bad was not really a thing. The other thing you get is that like a lot of complex pieces in the past aren't actually drawn by that artist. So you can look up at Jacob Jourdain's Baroque painting that's just like, whoa, there's so much crazy stuff going on. Actually, it wasn't painted by Jacob Jourdain's. It was painted by his workshop. So there was a bunch of art students who were low paid or even unpaid doing lots of different things on the canvas. And then Jacob would do the face and the hands. So when you made a contract, it would be like face and hands to be done by the master. So the master would focus on the things that had the most necessary kind of detail, the most necessary artistic touch, which was the face. Turns out AI is not good at doing faces. In my opinion, it's not. There's always something weird, like the eyes are not symmetrical, something doesn't match. You can get a couple usable faces sometimes, but not that many. I've used faces, I've gotten usable faces out of it, but a lot of times I have to correct things after the fact. I got to paint over it or just do some manipulation to kind of, iron out the kinks of what's there. And it does hands terribly. That's a big joke. There's always like 8-fingered hands. So the AI is not good at those things yet. So if you're an artist, where would you want to focus your time? Would you focus it on drawing a background with a bunch of leaves and bricks? Or would you have the AI draw the bricks for you in the style that you're working in, and then you can focus on the stuff that people really pay attention to and notice any flaw with, which is the face, the eyes, the hands, those sorts of things. So artists are already using AI to kind of cut corners and take shortcuts, which lets them produce more art of a higher quality, right? So in that case, it is a tool. And to me, it's just another expression of tools that are used in the past. Having a bunch of art students that are low skilled do the things that don't require a lot of skill while they study. And the master does the things which require the most delicate touch. And so artists are able to do that with one person. Instead of a field of low-paid art students eating gruel, it's an AI and you, right? And then there are other modern examples that people aren't really aware of at all, which is like drawing with references, that is, even tracing. So if you don't know who Greg Land is, he's an artist that's really famous for working in Marvel and for tracing all of his stuff. So he uses a lot of photo references. Now, he could be tracing or he could just using it as a reference, like looking and drawing it, because he does do alterations. And he reuses his own art. So if there's a pose he likes, he'll just draw another character with the exact same pose, the exact same proportions. He'll just redraw the same thing he's drawn a dozen times before, like the artist of yore, because Greg has to work on a deadline, right? He's got to produce a whole book in a month, and it's got to be to a high standard. So he does whatever you do to do that quickly, which is use a photo reference. Why spend an extra hour composing the pose before you start really penciling and inking? Just start with the photo reference, and all the proportions are there. All the camera angles are already there. You don't have to iron out any kind of proportional issues, and it's going to look good when you're done. So yeah, we're already in a place where people trace photo. They use photo references. They also use photo bashing. That's what I do for most of my covers, but artists will do it as a sketch. So they'll put a bunch of photos together and then That's the sketch layer, and then they'll do a sketch on top of it and then paint on top of it using digital tools, and boom. Is that cheating? Well, a lot of people would say yes. You need to compose it right from the beginning, but it's a time thing, right? It's got to be good and it's got to be on time. So you use tools like references, you use tools like tracing, you use tools like reusing the art you've done before because you've already done it. And if you're copying yourself, it's not really like unethical to copy yourself, is it? Well, I guess that's another question. Anyway, problem number 4 is that art sucks. I kind of referenced this before, but we have 100 years of degradation of art. Modern art is a joke. When people talk about modern art, they are talking about what a freaking joke it is and how stupid it is. We got bananas taped to walls. We've got Jackson Pollock flinging paint all over a canvas. We even have aleatoric art, like that's a kind of aleatoric art. But you have 20 years ago, I was using a computer to randomly generate music. So I was creating algorithmic music 20 years ago. Guys, it's not new, and people were doing algorithmic music back in the 50s, and people were doing algorithmic art. For 60 years, we've been looking at art which has no artistic merit to it. Doesn't look good. That isn't even to a standard, right? There's no standard. That's the big inheritance of the postmodern, is that anything could be art. There's a question of what is art. If anything could be art, then there's no standard, which means there is no art, because art is a work performed to a standard. So the idea of artistic intent has been divorced from art, like I said, and that's part of that. So art sucks. People have been surrounded by art that's bad. You have to go back more than 100 years to find fine art, which is even worth looking at, is what it's like. So in those sorts of situations, an AI-generated image, which looks good, it looks better at least than the crap that you're being told is art, well, people are going to like that, and people are going to want to use it because, well, it looks better than what they've been seeing for 100 years. And that brings me to actually problem number 5, which is artists suck. So the main people pushing back against this are artists. Like I said, non-artists don't really get it. Artists are afraid of being replaced. Good artists don't need to worry about that for reasons that I'll continue to get into. Bad artists do need to worry about it, I guess, because most artists suck. And if you've ever tried to produce a comic book, you know that this is the case. It's not just that they are technically incapable. We have 100 plus years of bad art coming out of academia. And really, we have 2 kinds of bad art. We have the fine art, which has been completely degraded to the point where there is no art. That's the academic realm. And then you have the corporate realm. So it's either corporate, boring schlock, or it's completely repugnant, uninterpretable garbage. So within those 2 extremes, people are going to like AR in the middle, but we also have a lack of artists who are doing really emotional and original and I guess elevated works of art these days. It's actually a real problem. So our institutions don't train artists to be good at their craft. If someone has an arts degree, if someone has a PhD in art, there's a very good chance they will be bad at art. You can get a PhD in art having never actually performed work to a standard, have never actually been good at it, have never produced anything that anyone enjoys looking at. It's quite possible. And in fact, it's probably the norm. The number of people that I've encountered who have a fine arts degree of some kind and are good at their craft is very slim, especially in the visual arts. Less so in music. Musicians, I've met a lot of great musicians who are they're very high level players. With a PhD. There's still some standards in music, but with visual art, with literature, there's virtually no standards. So there's no telling what you're going to get if somebody has an arts degree. And if you can look at their portfolio, if they even have one, even if they have enough, they can have a bachelor's degree in art and not have enough to show you as a portfolio. You look at their portfolio and it's terrible. How can I use them as somebody who needs art as part of a project? I need art for a book cover or for a book interior or something like that. I can't use these artists at any price, right? The artists who do have the skill are so rare that they're way too expensive to use most of the time. So instead, you use photo covers because the skill level is so rare now that it's almost impossible to find really good illustrators who are able to work at a reasonable price. You want good and cheap, it's not going to happen. You can find good and expensive. You can find cheap and terrible. Pick one, right? So we picked a third way. The entire literature industry picked a third way, which is We just use stock photos for covers because we can't find enough good artists to work to a high standard for the correct amount of money, given how many books you're going to sell. And this is especially true for me. Like, I don't sell a ton of copies of books, and sometimes I write books that I know are not going to sell well. I don't have Al Shafalda here, but you should read Al Shafalda because it's cool and it's a tragedy. But I know that writing a fantasy tragedy in the classical sense is not going to sell super well in the modern genre world, which is really focused on tropes and magic systems and crap like that. To write the kind of story that exists in Al Shafalda, it's like I held off on publishing it for 2 years because I just was like, people are not going to like this, especially after the 2020 election. They don't want to read a tragedy. But hey, that's what it is. Now, if I had paid $1,500 for an artist to draw a great piece of art for that book, well, I'd be out $1,400 pretty much, right? I haven't made that much money on the book. So like losing $1,400 on an experimental book is not really acceptable. You have to choose another way, which is going to be stock photos, or what I did with that book, which is kind of melding AI images together to produce a final product which is presentable and looks cool enough that people want to click on it and maybe see what the story's about. That's really important. So yeah, artists suck. It's really hard to find good artists. And it's really hard to find ones, if they have skill, that they're actually going to be professional. You can talk to anyone who's made comics. You have artists that disappear halfway through a project with the money in hand, and then you have to somehow find another artist to finish it. Even the big two, frequently you'll buy a book and there'll be 3 different art styles in it because none of the artists could actually finish the book within a month. So one artist started it and was not going to be able to finish, so they had the second half of the book illustrated by another artist, and he couldn't finish it, and so they had the last 2 pages illustrated by a third. Like, you used to have someone like John Buscema or Jack Kirby would do multiple books a month sometimes, and to a very high standard. They were very skilled. They were really good at what they did, but we've lost a lot of that skill. It's much rarer. It's harder to find. It's harder to perform things to the standard of yore, so it's a problem. Good luck finding an artist that can do things on time and under budget. It's not going to happen, and to a high standard. Problem number 6 is that non-art is already standard. I kind of went over this. We chose the third way, which is photo covers. So we've already accepted, the market has already accepted that it's okay to not have art, not have cover art at all, to just have photos for your cover. In fact, it's standard. And in some genres, you don't want an illustrated cover. You don't want art on your cover. If you're in nonfiction, you want very minimalist art, not expensive, difficult to do art. You maybe want no art or just a photo, right? I've gone over nonfiction cover design. Go look in the nonfiction section and see how much art there is. Pretty much the only genre which uses art extensively is fantasy, like paintings. And even then, people are completely willing to buy a book that just is photo bashed. That's just got photos on the cover. If I could just grab one off the shelf, because I've done a bunch of them. Let's grab Shadow and Smoke, right? This is a great one. And we'll grab Water of Awakening because that has a painting. So this has a painted cover. And I'm really fond of this painted cover. This is a big book for me. I'm happy to spend money on a painted cover for book 3, Leper King. Now, the teaser cover that you guys have seen, that's not going to be the final cover. I'm probably going to have like a real artist do a real cover because I want to splurge on like my favorite books, which are some of these in the Eternal Dream series. Shadow and Smoke. This is a photo bash cover. This is a cover that has like 15 different stock photos stuck together to produce a scene, and then highly manipulated. I painted over it and did all kinds of other things to produce this image that communicates like the fantasy genre and all that kind of stuff, so that people know what's going on with this cover. But there's no art in the context of this. Like, this is art in a sense because I'm acting as an artist, but there's no art like a visual artist painting a painting. I've already excised them. I've already removed their skills from the necessity of my workflow entirely because they're too expensive and it's too hard to find people that can perform to a high standard. If you're going to put out a fantasy book, that painting has to be, it's got to be good, or it's going to actually hurt your sales worse than a photo cover. So a photo cover is going to be better than a bad painting always. A good painting will be maybe slightly better than a photo cover or the same. Really, you're talking about a thing for people to click on to communicate to the reader quickly. Here's what's in the book. It needs to be to a certain standard, but exceeding that standard doesn't necessarily equal more book sales at all. You have to meet the standard, and that's the thing. So paintings can help you do it, but you can also do it with photos. So why are big publishers, I think, Tor Books, Tor Books came out with this dumb tweet. Tor Books designed the cover for Fractal Noise by Christopher Paolini. During the process of creating this cover, we licensed an image from a reputable stock house. We were not aware that the image may have been created by AI. Our in-house designer used the licensed image to create the cover, which was presented to Christopher for approval. Due to production constraints, we've decided to move ahead with our current cover. Tor Publishing Group has championed creators in the SFF community since our founding and will continue to do so. So people are like, I can't believe you used AI images. Like, they already use stock photos. Why are you not objecting to stock photos? That ship has sailed. The idea, you've already accepted that people don't use art in their book covers. So what's the difference between getting a stock photo and paying 10 cents for the stock photo? Because under these stock photo plans, I sell a lot of stock photos. I don't make a lot of money from it. Somebody whose image you license is getting paid like $0.25 to use that image. Or maybe more, maybe $1, right? They're not getting paid a lot to license the image, is what I'm saying. So you license the image for a very small amount of money, usually, unless you're doing like a really expensive, or it's like a premium photo or something. And then you're just going to pay the designer a little bit of money and pocket the difference, because it would cost thousands of dollars to have a legitimate painter spend the time necessary to make a great painted cover. So yeah, we've already accepted that. That ship has already sailed. We're already into that. So yeah, publishers want a penny pinch. I understand. I penny pinch. That's why I do photo covers. They're cheap. So that's why I would do AI art covers, because they're cheap. And for me, I'm into enabling people to publish their books. I don't think people should have to pay $1,500 to publish a fantasy book. I don't think people should have to pay $2,000 to publish a fantasy book or whatever it is to hire a competent artist to make a successful cover. I think people should be able to enter the market cheaply. And AI allows them to do that without them having to learn an extreme amount of Photoshop skills. Like, I use a lot of Photoshop in my covers, but using AI assets, I have to use significantly less of those skills in order to produce a cool cover. I can start with an AI image and just do a couple little things, and boom, I have a cover, versus having to bash together 12 or 15 photos, or I don't even know how many were in shadow and smoke. Like, I have to look and count. There's at least there's like 2 different cloud pictures. There's the moon, the sky I drew the sky, and then there's like the city street, the lamp, like all these elements are different, and then I had to paint over them to like get the lighting right and to get the colors right and to like make the image. So there's a bunch of images, and you have to do a lot of work to it. AI cuts down on that. So if I can teach writers how to enter the market cheaply and effectively, and have a cover that is going to sell really well for them, or at least be the minimum standard so they can sell their book at all, to me that's good. To me, that's a good thing, and especially since the market doesn't really require you to use art. Really, it's a very weird line to say, like, wait, you can't use computer-generated images, but you can just use stock photos that you pay someone $0.25 for. Like, come on. That book is, that ship has sailed. And the ship sailed because of all the reasons I talked about. Art sucks, artists suck, it's too expensive, and people already accept that there's no art. So problem number 7 is AI art is actually bad. I've kind of talked about this. It's good in some ways. It can be a big shortcut, but like I said, it can't do hands, it can't do faces very well, it can't compose a complex image very well at all. It can do impressionist works, but I can't be like, okay, I want a picture of a girl and she's standing in a field of yellow flowers in a green forest. There's magical purple haze everywhere, blah, blah, blah. I can have a painting in mind. If I describe it it won't do that. It's too complex. You can draw the girl. You can draw maybe the girl in a specific color dress, and maybe you'll get a dress that you like. You can draw the forest. And so that's what I end up doing, is using a bunch of separate, I make like 3 or 4 AI images and bash them together and smooth out the colors and all that kind of stuff. But it saves a lot of time because I don't have to do a bunch of color filtering on each stock image, which is what I normally have to do. I have to very meticulously adjust the color range of every single image so that it all blends together. We don't have to do any of that. You just be like, oh, I want a yellow and I want a green forest with yellow flowers, and boom, there it is. And then like, oh, I want a girl who looks like this, and there she is, and you just kind of stick them together. I want planets, and then I want ships, and then I want, just stick those things together, and then you kind of have a cover. And it takes a lot less effort. So that means that somebody could design their cover and have it look good enough to sell, and do it in an afternoon for a couple dollars or free, either with photos or with AI. That's a boon. That means someone else gets to achieve their dream of publishing their book, and they don't have to break the bank. They don't have to empty their bank account to buy a ticket to play. The cover is an ad, and you're buying a ticket to play. You're buying a ticket to hopefully get people to buy the book. You shouldn't. I'm not a believer that people should have to pay thousands of dollars in order to publish their book. I know that there's many people who sell author services that are like, no, you should hire an editor for $3,000 and hire a painter for $2,000. You should spend $10,000 to publish a book. You're like, I don't believe that at all. In fact, my best-selling books have been my cheapest. Like, I think my best-selling book is now Eyes in the Walls, and it's one stock photo that I drew eyes on. Where is it? I'll get it. I'll show it to you. It's a super simple cover. I did it really quick because I didn't know. I wrote it in a month, and then put it out. I wrote it in November, a couple years ago. So this is what it looks like. It's a picture of a morgue, and I just drew a couple eyes, color graded it, and then designed the little text. Like, this is really easy stuff to do, guys. This is my best-selling book, and it's my cheapest, easiest cover I ever did. But it's to a high enough standard that people will see it and be like, oh, it invokes just enough curiosity that you're going to click on it and read the description. And that is a public, that image is in the public domain. That's Hieronymus Bosch, the Temptations of St. Anthony the Great, a saint that I happen to, have a connection to, or a lot of affection for, affinity for. St. Anthony is actually in the book. Anyway, so yeah, my best-selling book is the cheapest, easiest cover that I made. You don't need to spend millions of dollars to do it. You pay to play, but you don't have to pay a lot. I want to get that ticket for you guys to enter the market as cheap as possible, so you can achieve your dreams, so you can have success, so you can make some money, so that you can get money for your art. Like, how good is that going to feel? And what's the art here, right? What's the art? The art is this. It's the story. This is the ad to help you know what's inside the story. It's to help sell the story. It's not the book itself. The book is the art that I'm making. And the cover is really an ad to get people to hopefully buy that art, right? So that's, I guess, all of my big points here. I don't really have too much else to say about that. I've talked about this elsewhere, but that's like as deep as I can go with it, with the little aside about, is it demonic or something like that? I don't think so. Here's the only moral issue. So I'm going to get to the only moral issue that I can really find in here, which is the nature of copyright and how people's images are used to train these AIs, to train the software. The software uses other images to more or less train itself to make new images, like to combine them and do new things with them, right? So the images that it initially looks at, those artists aren't being compensated for their art being fed into the machine. Should they be? That's the moral question. Now, if we go back in time, if the AI is a person, it's not a person, but if you imagine it's acting like a person, artists back in time, they didn't pay other artists to copy their work as an exercise to learn how to draw better. They didn't pay artists to go look at their work and learn new techniques, which they then applied, right? They just did that. And you can do it now. You can look up, if you want to draw like John Buscema, you can look up John Buscema ink drawings and copy them and learn some of his technique that way. And that's a really good way to do it. Artists do that a lot. So is the AI doing that any different? It's generating new images. In fact, it'd be very difficult to say that any image it generates is a derivative work. I think you could try to sue them, but I don't see any. I'm not a lawyer. I don't see any avenue, given what I know about copyright as a professional, I don't see any avenue for litigation success within the law. I mean, maybe you could convince a jury, but I think you'd be very difficult. Be like, this image is a derivative of my client's image, for which he was not compensated. I think you're going to have I think it's going to be impossible to prove, frankly. So that's the moral question. That's the one I'll leave you with. I'm not certain on the yay or nay on that, like whether people who have had the software look at their images deserve to be compensated for that or not. But that's the only moral question that I find in here. Other ones are more emotional reactions, like artists won't have work, and then what would our society look like if the artists don't? We already have a society with no artists and with bad art. So the idea of like, what would society look like if artists were out of work? It's like artists have already completely failed in their mission to produce good art. That's why AI art exists in the first place. It's completely backward thinking. Like, we have to get rid of the AI art so to save art. It's like you've spent 100 years destroying art. In order to save art, you got to teach people how to do art. You got to make artists better. You have to make art better before you can complain about the machine doing better art than the artist. Sorry, guys, that's how it is. Like, our art establishment doesn't get to complain that people want AI art when they've been producing garbage. In some cases, literal garbage. Like, here's a pile of garbage, that's art, and here's a little card about how it's art. Been doing garbage for 50 to 100 years. Sorry, doesn't work that way. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Let's take a look at the chat and all that good stuff. So, boom.